Tonight on Greater Boston, yet more new COVID infection records, disrupting everything from airlines and restaurants to schools across the country, some of which, including here, are delaying a post-holiday return to the classroom thanks to staffing and test shortages. So as testing and quarantine guidelines are changing, and Omicron seems to be playing by its own rules, what do concerned parents need to know as they send their kids back in this latest wave? And how can we all keep ourselves safe? Joseph Allen, an exposure assessment expert at Harvard School of Public Health, joins me on that and on everything you wanted to know about masks, but had no one to ask. Then later, I'm joined by the Boston-based founder of NuMarket. It's a platform aimed at crowdfunding support for local independent businesses in a unique way, along with the restaurateurs behind the now legendary Celeste in Somerville, who are aiming to open a new restaurant with NuMarket's help. Another year, another surge with COVID cases setting new records over the last few days across the nation and in this state. More than 31,000 new cases were reported over the past 3 days here in Massachusetts, with a record high average positive rate of nearly 20%. And that's just the people who were lucky enough to be able to find an official test site, with reports around the state of people waiting hours and hours to get a PCR test, if they're able to get one at all. The many who were lucky enough to find and afford rapid at-home tests and who've gotten positive results aren't even included in those numbers. But one thing's clear right now, COVID is spreading like wildfire.
I call it a tsunami of infections. When you have so many cases, even if the rate of hospitalization is lower with Omicron than it is with Delta, there's still the danger that you're going to have a surging of hospitalizations that might stress the healthcare system.
And it's not just hospital systems. Thousands of flights have been canceled due to crew members testing positive for COVID and having to quarantine, prompting Delta's CEO to request a change in quarantine procedures a couple of weeks back. And a few days after that, the CDC cut the recommended quarantine period in half, from 10 days down to 5 for people without any symptoms, a move that stirred up controversy, but which Dr. Anthony Fauci, among others, is defending.
There's no doubt that you do want to get people out into the workplace if they are without symptoms. And in the second half of a 10-day period, the likelihood of transmissibility is considerably lower. The CDC is doing their very best in trying to get the right balance of getting people back, but doing it on a solid scientific basis.
And of course, there's another piece to this latest surge.
It's unlike anything we've ever seen. Even at the peak of the prior surges, there is absolutely no way to keep Omicron out of the schools. No way.
Now, we're already seeing some schools dealing with staff shortages, student outbreaks, and a lack of available tests that are forcing cancellations, delays, and other disruptions. Still, here in Massachusetts, Governor Baker is standing firm we will not return to remote schooling.
We said for quite a while, since the beginning of the school year, in fact, all the way back to last spring, that it was critically important for kids to be in school for a number of reasons.
Now, in one bit of help, the FDA did authorize booster shots today for kids 12 to 15 and some immunocompromised kids age 5 and up. But we're still a ways away from vaccine for kids under 5, and at this point, less than 10% of kids age 5 to 17 have gotten even a single one of the doses available to them. So, how do we make sure our kids are safe in schools? And what about those masks? Which one am I supposed to wear again? Joined by Joseph Allen, he's Associate Professor of Exposure Assessment Science and the Director of the Healthy Buildings Program at Harvard School of Public Health. Joseph Allen, it's good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Good to be back, Jim.
Now, I'm a big mandate guy, vaccinations, masks, all that kind of stuff. A couple of days before Christmas, the governor joined us on our radio show, and we were part of the chorus that day that was taking issue with him about his refusal to impose a statewide mandate. You are not part of that chorus. You think he's doing the right thing. Why?
Well, I think a couple things. First, I think it's time to update the playbook for 2022. I think a lot of the non-pharmaceutical interventions, the NPIs, were the bridge to the vaccine. At this point, we've had the vaccine widely available. Hopefully people have gotten boosted. That's the number one strategy we can put in place. I think if we knew that the mask let's take a step back. Masks work. Universal masking can be effective. I think the reality of what we're seeing even in Massachusetts and Boston is that people aren't always following this mask mandate, even when it is mandated. And there's an assumption that only spread is happening in the public places where the mandates take effect. I think Omicron is spreading very rapidly. I think people who are protected, who are vaccinated, are protected against the worst effects of the virus.
Should Baker be doing anything more on a statewide basis? Michelle Wu, who'll be with me tomorrow night, just a week or so ago, decided to emulate New York and a few other jurisdictions and require vaccinations if you want to go into places like restaurants, gyms, performance venues. Should Baker be doing that statewide?
I think that's really smart. Like you, I've been an advocate for vaccine mandates going back to August. It was very clear. It's clear that vaccines are the path out of this. It's clear that the voluntary approach to vaccination hit its limit. I thought New York City was very smart in putting this in back over the summer. If you need to go into a place, a restaurant or show, you show proof of vaccination. I think Mayor Wu is smart in doing the same thing. Since
you're the healthy buildings guy, let's get back to masks in a minute and talk about schools if we can. You are, I think, part of a category of people who believe, a la Baker, that schools should remain open almost at any cost. Is that because of the test to stay notion? And by the way, for those who don't know that, normally if there's a positive test and you're in close contact, you send home to quarantine. The test to stay thing we have here says if you test negative every day, you stay in school. It apparently has saved hundreds of thousands of school days. What's the motivation for your position?
Well, I think we've gotten really narrow in terms of risk when we think about kids and schools. Kids, fortunately, are very low risk from this virus. On the other hand, the costs of kids out of school have been severe and they're accumulating. We've seen losses in literacy gains. We've seen millions of kids missing entirely from the system. Schools are the first place we detect maltreatment at home. An analysis by New York City found in just 3 months, 8,000 cases of abuse or neglect that were expected to be reported were not. Extrapolate to the country, that's 300,000 cases. Now, think about what that is for the entire year. On top of that, we see kids rely on schools for meals. 14 million meals, kids were missing meals at schools. The list goes on and on. It extends to working women who have been impacted from having kids out of school, dropping out of the labor force at higher rates than men. So we've sometimes, at the exclusive focus of COVID, we've neglected all these other impacts. We can keep kids and adults safe in school. These other things, we pull kids out of school, we can't keep them as safe.
But when you say it's low risk, haven't hospitalizations, pediatric hospitalizations gone up pretty dramatically during Omicron? Am I right about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked it because in the article I wrote for the New York Times last week, I talked about the hospitalization rate for kids, which has stayed very consistent across all of the waves, including Alpha, Delta, and even early evidence from Omicron, at about or less than 1 per 100,000. That's a low rate. If you're reading headlines that say the hospitalization rate has doubled, that might be right. But if it goes from 0.2 to 0.4 per 100,000, that is a doubling. At the same time, it's in the range of 4 per million.
One last thing about schools before we move back to masks is you tweeted something the other day about an inconsistency about something I mentioned before, the reduction across the board from 10 days to 5 days for this isolation period. And finally, to Fauci's credit, he suggested over the weekend a negative test would be a nice thing. I don't have any experience in the area. It made sense to me long before he said it. But you point out that there's still CDC guidance in effect, at least there was a couple of days ago, that there's a 10-day period if you test positive in a school. 5 days in the general public, 10 days in a school. How does the CDC explain the distinction?
I don't know. It's really inconsistent to me. It reminds me of what happened with guidance for masking for adults from the summer. They set a limit on masking based on community spread for adults, didn't set something for kids, so it was masked indefinitely. Same thing here. We have one set of guidance for adults, different set of guidance for kids. Some people have argued that maybe the new guidance of 5-day applies to kids, but I've been talking to school nurses, interacting with them on social media. They're confused. If people are confused, it's bad guidance. And let me just say, I totally agree with you on the test to return strategy. I think most people in public health agree that you should test to return, test negative before you can come back. I think what the administration is dealing with is the reality there are fewer rapid tests available, and implementing this at scale is going to be very difficult right now.
You were here about a year ago, and here's your tweet, a piece of your tweet about that appearance. Here you are. And you see what you say, confused about these kinds of masks, double masking, you're not alone. Here's my 90-second explainer. And as you probably know, nearly 500,000 people have viewed your 90-second explainer. So in an attempt to disprove that there are no second acts in American life, for those who missed it, And those who don't want to go on Twitter, they're TV kind of people. Could you do another 90 seconds with whatever update you think is appropriate, since there's a mask focus right now, Joseph Allen?
Yeah, pressure's on. So let me try and hit the same notes. But the value of masks depends on the two F's, filtration and fit. And most people think about filtration. So let's start there. You want to use the best mask you can if you're going to wear a mask. In that case, you want one of these better masks. You've probably heard of an N95, a KN95, or a KF94. These are the highest grade masks, but I want to be careful with people. The KN95s, there's still many counterfeits out there. So if you're looking for a better mask, N95 or the KF94 out of Korea, that's the one I like to wear, and KN95s, do your homework before you do that. Second level after that are surgical masks or double masking, where you can have a surgical mask with a cloth mask on top to improve fit. After that would come a simple 3-layer cloth mask. Now, I mentioned filtration and fit. N95s, if it's hanging off your nose, off your face, a lot of gaps, isn't going to be that effective. You want to concentrate on fit. And that's where the double masking came in last year, Jim, because a lot of people were wearing surgical masks, a lot of people had cloth masks, not many people had N95s. So what can you do in the interim? Use these cheap masks, blue surgical masks that we're all familiar with, cloth mask on top to improve the fit, and that'll improve the overall effectiveness of the mask.
Excellent. Almost as good as last year, I should say. Now, I have a couple of questions about that. Cloth mask, which you put in the third or fourth tier, whatever, cloth mask alone, not double masking. My understanding is that most of the experts are suggesting cloth masks, other than to cover a surgical mask, are virtually worthless. You don't subscribe to that notion?
Well, I've been studying personal protective equipment for a long time, and the reality is that different masks perform at different levels. And if you think about cloth masks, I don't think they're entirely ineffective. Let's say we have a 50% effective cloth mask. You and I both wear one. The combined efficiency going through two filters is 75%. That's pretty good. Two surgical masks is 70%. Combined efficiency is 91%. So it's not that they're totally worthless. And I also think context matters. We talked about filtration, the two F's, the filter efficiency and the fit, but context matters. So if I'm in a high-risk setting, I'm in an ICU, I want an N95 that's well-fitted. If I'm with my friends who are fully vaccinated, I don't think we need to wear a mask, but if you're in a low-risk situation, I think a 3-layer cloth mask would be okay, or a surgical mask.
How do I detect a KN95 counterfeit? Just stay away from them?
I'd be careful here. I've been warning about this since April 2020. I've written about this extensively. NIOSH and OSHA have warned about this. You can go to CDC's website, look up the mask. They've done some testing on some of these. Some of them can be good, but we've seen too many counterfeits. There's still millions that have been brought into the US early on that are still in circulation. I've seen this firsthand. So I would just be very careful. Choose an N95 if you can find it. I also like the KF94 out of Korea.
Speaking of the KF94, I was going to say to you, a viewer wrote in and asked this question, but actually it's me. I use KF94s, and I've read a number of different things about reusing them. They're not really cheap. Well, they're comparatively. They're about $1 a piece, that sort of thing. I've read you put it in a paper bag, shut the bag, let it sit there for a week, and you can ultimately reuse it up to 40 hours worth of use. Is that close to right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, really, the filtration efficiency is going to stay pretty good. Once the ear loops start wearing out, or your fit starts to degrade, that's where I think you have a problem. Some people are cycling in masks, say 1 or 2 days. If you put it in a bag on the side, I wouldn't seal it up. I'd let it air out a little bit, just one point there. But really, you can reuse these masks. I use my KF94 over and over. I think the context also depends. If I'm 8 hours at the hospital, then something has to be different. If I'm using it occasionally when I go to the grocery store, I will reuse a KF94 for a long time.
You know, you mentioned the two Fs. If I can add a third, I am of the belief that the federal government has effed the public on these tests. The notion that someday in January there might be a contract signed to have 500 million tests provided to the American people, assuming they can get them to us, they will last about a minute and a half. On the mask front, shouldn't the federal government be providing billions and billions and billions of masks, like a KF94, by the way, as an example, free to the American public? Isn't that the best way to deal with the mask issue?
Yeah, I think to your point, I think these are major screw-ups over the past 2 years. It's unbelievable. We find ourselves in January not being able to get a rapid test. We've been arguing for these for a year and a half. Same thing on the mask front. It was very clear early on that we could have had these better masks, especially in the pre-vaccine era when we needed them most. And it's, there's no reason, right? We should have had homemade masks for a year and a half, when these things are cheap, they're easy to produce, the market had to be guaranteed by the government, absolutely should have been delivered high efficiency mass right from the beginning. In fact, also, where's the innovation? Right, we're still dealing with these same old N95s. You're telling me the great companies we have in this country, the government with some government money couldn't develop effective masks that look cool, that are breathable for kids and adults. I mean, clearly we're way behind the ball on this. No innovation in this space at all.
Well, thank you for the second tutorial. I hope there's no need for a third. Joseph Allen, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks, Jim.
It seems like every time we see a light at the end of the tunnel, there's another unexpected bend in that road. And for independent businesses, every new setback hits hard, with many threatening to break those businesses. But one Boston entrepreneur is hoping his innovation can help. It's called NuMarket. And it's a social crowdfunding platform that lets people support their favorite local businesses. The best part, you actually get back more than you give, as its founder will explain in a minute. And already, it's working. If you've enjoyed the fantastic Mamala's new location in Brookline, you can thank NuMarket for that. They opened up in August after supporters exceeded their $180,000 goal. And now the duo behind the nationally recognized Celeste in Somerville and a second restaurant in their second home in Vermont, Esmeralda, is hoping NuMarket will help them open their new spot, La Royale, in Cambridge, along with the same secret ingredient they told me back in pre-pandemic times that they relied on last time around.
We cook with love, we want to share love, we want to receive love. It's all about love.
And joining me to keep the love alive, I hope, is JuanMa Calderón, along with Maria Rondeau, the owners, who also happen to be partners outside of work. And we're also joined by Ross Chanowski, the man behind NuMarket. Ross, good to meet you, and JuanMa, Maria, it's good to see you both.
Lovely to see you.
Maria,
great to be here, Jim.
Great to see you. Maria, let me start with you. Celeste, 4+ years ago, recognized best restaurant, new restaurant in America. Esmeralda, one of the best new restaurants by Esquire. Why La Royale? What does it do that the others did not?
This one really feels the closest to home. Although Celeste emanated from our house and Esmeralda is in our home, this is our neighborhood. This is where we've been living for 10, 15 years. This is where we built our lives. Our kids go to school down the block. We know a lot of the people in this area. To have a space that is half a block from where we live, with the people that we love, that are part of our community, is very, very special to us.
You know, Maria, I noticed that there are 48 seats in La Royale planned. There were 24 seats in Esmeralda, 24 seats in Celeste. I'm there a lot, so I know. What's with the multiples of 24? Is there some spiritual thing going on? What's going on?
It's like Corb had his modular man. There's something about the golden rule. So yeah, 12, 24, any multiple thereof has been a very lucky, fortuitous number for us. I
have a feeling there's more to it you're not telling me. So JuanMa, the critical question of the night, is love still the secret sauce in all you're doing, or what's the deal?
Yeah, love, you have to be love, yeah. There's no more options.
And you feel, I mean, I have to say, I hate to sound something, but when you walk into Celeste and you see it's an open kitchen, you feel something, sort of, you feel part of something as soon as you walk through the door. That's part of the deal, right?
Yes, absolutely. For us, being at the heart of it and being always part of what's going on is critical.
Okay.
We wouldn't have it in.
So La Royale, enter NuMarket. Ross, this NuMarket thing is a creature of the pandemic. Describe the genesis to us.
Yeah, I think it is a creature and a creature of the pandemic, but it's a sentiment that's long been held by people in the Boston area and all over the world, which is that we love people like Maria and JuanMa. We love places like Celeste. And what we're trying to do is give everyone the opportunity to support those places, get more back, and have communities that are incredibly vibrant, diverse, and important to all of us as individuals and as communities.
When you say get more back, I didn't describe how that worked. It's pretty creative. Explain to people how they get more back by giving.
Sure. When you fund a business like La Royale or Celeste, you will be getting back 120% of what you put in back as credits to use towards the business over time. So if you love Celeste and you want to go in and get pisco and lomo saltado, some of our favorite things, you'll be able to use those credits for all of that and all of the things that you love at a lot of the places that you love.
And we should be clear, we've talked a lot on this show and on our radio show about the plight, Ross, of small businesses, small independent businesses during the pandemic, and not just restaurants, even though restaurants obviously have taken a serious hit. Your effort is not just targeted at restaurants, is it, or is it?
It's not. No, it's for independent businesses who are involved directly with their customers and their communities. So we've had everything from mushroom delivery to your doorstep, which is a great business, Tyler from Mushrooms for My Friends, to La Royale restaurants and apparel businesses that are both in-store and online. All of the things that really make up vibrant communities, whether they be physical in the brick and mortar sense or digital, of being able to ship and deliver to our homes.
Maria, what does it mean to you when somebody who you know, who loves what you both do and your colleagues do, decides to give to help support your work?
I mean, for us, it's we are very grateful for all the support. All these years, we have a lot of friends, or we have customers that have become very good friends. And it's so important for us to have that support, because we support many employees, our infrastructure, there's a lot going on, and any support that we get, we can translate back by supporting the people that work with us, that really have made a big difference in how we operate. So,
JuanMa, I'm sorry, JuanMa, I know Celeste obviously is Peruvian. Esmeralda is part Peruvian, and you have guest chefs, so I guess it's a combination of things. In terms of food, what's going to set La Royale apart?
La Royale is still being a Peruvian food. It's a totally different menu compared with Celeste. We trying to go a little bit further than Peruvian food. The most of Peruvian food that people know is Peruvian food coming from Lima, from the capital. So in this restaurant, we try to
cover.
We try to cover different regions of Peru, like the jungle, or the Andes, or the coast. Yeah.
So, Ross, back to you. I don't know if you've done this kind of analysis. I know you've existed less than a year. Do people who give because of the, quote, profit, and I know it's an odd sort of profit, do they give because they care about the JuanMas and the Marias of the world? What's the motivating factor in your estimation?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think we've had a chance over the last couple of weeks to do a little bit of a retrospective, and we found a mix of both. You'll have folks who just really want to support whatever it is that Maria and JuanMa are doing. And then there are folks who are really, really looking for that 20% back. And both work, both are important. And we think it's a great way to create a new kind of economic engine built around, to steal the theme of the night, built around love and around community.
And the only way that you don't get that return, I hate to be, crass about it, is obviously if the thing you're investing in, for lack of a better expression, doesn't make it. But other than that, you're getting 120% back on your original contribution investment, right?
Right, exactly. And what we do is we send those credits back monthly, starting 30 days later. So you start getting these credits to use super quickly so that you can go in to La Royale, to Celeste, order online, whatever it is that you want to be doing. And you can do that extremely fast. And what we found is that a lot of people will go in, spend those credits, spend above them. And it creates an interesting new engine for businesses as well, where it's as much, community loyalty as it is funding.
Ross, staying with you, you probably don't want to answer this question, but why not? I'll try anyway. Your idea is so obvious to me. I mean, it's such I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean that, I guess, as a compliment and an observation. Is this being done elsewhere, or are you it?
Well, Jim, if you have criticism, we'll take that too. We love some good feedback.
I don't.
I think I think there are a lot of pieces out there that are extremely important for this big umbrella of funding for independent businesses. And we right now are focused on this credit model. And if it's not the right fit for any business, we try to point them in the right direction for a model that does work, whether it's a different region, a different type of financing. But there are a lot of options out there right now. We're just trying to create a little bit of a new one.
Maria, before you go, when I first before I met you and JuanMa, and before I'd been to your restaurant, I read about this restaurant, Celeste, in the Boston Globe or maybe it was the New York Times, I'm not sure. And what shocked me was, as wildly successful as your opening was, one of the first things you announced was, we're going to close this in 5 years. It's a short-term project. I asked you about that. Here's what you said when you were here last time.
It's kind of what keeps us going when we're so exhausted at the end of the week.
Really?
It's almost like a countdown. But I think the plan is that this one will shut down and we could possibly do it elsewhere. We're interested in moving around.
My understanding is shut down no more, correct?
That's right.
What happened?
Too much has gone. We're staying. The pandemic probably really rooted us in a way that we never imagined was possible. Our community support was so strong. The people that work with us made it all happen. They pulled together. We can't just walk away. So for us, it's important to stick around. And the idea of traveling now has become a little less pressing because we found a place right around the corner that we fell in love with.
You know, before you go, for those who don't know you, and I think a lot of the audiences come in and do, you're an architect by trade. JuanMa is a filmmaker. I know you made a film together. JuanMa, do you miss that, or is this your life? This is it?
Funny you mentioned.
No, I negotiate with the boss 1 year, one sabbatical year to take care of my film projects.
So it sounds like NuMarket's going to be called in for a film project too. I'll contribute to that.
That's exactly what I'm thinking now.
Ross, it's good to meet you. Good luck with your effort. Maria, JuanMa, good luck with yours as well. Can't wait for the new place. Thanks so much.
We have one more day left for the campaign to end. So any support would be amazing.
Great. Take that to heart, everybody. Good to see all three of you. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. For more information on the new restaurant venture and on the creative fundraising model, head to NuMarket.co, no M on the end. That's it for tonight. Please come back tomorrow. Mayor Michelle Wu will join on the surge of COVID in Boston, staffing shortages at the city's public schools, why it's so hard to find testing, and the latest on her plan to solve the mass and cast problem. That and more tomorrow at 7. Thank you for watching. Please stay safe.